Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have a very special guest, Ellen. Ellen, is your name Ellen Busch or is it Busch?
It's Busch.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's like Anheuser-Busch.
Oh, that'll be easy to remember. I think I used to drink those all the
I
time.
think we all did it one
Yeah.
time.
Ellen Busch is an author and adventurer from Colorado whose life story is a testament to the power of resilience and self-discovery. Diagnosed with dyslexia early in life, Ellen overcame significant educational challenges with the support of her family. She has tackled adventures across the globe, from ocean navigation and skiing to becoming a certified scuba diver. Ellen's journey also includes overcoming personal trauma, including an abusive marriage and the loss of her parents. Through coaching, therapy, and training with Navy SEALs, she's found healing and empowerment. Her book, Disempowered, released in May 2023, shares her inspiring journey to help others overcome adversity and reclaim their power. Wow. Already reading your bio, I'm like, this is going to be an incredible podcast episode. And I'm so excited that you're on my show. I feel like we have things already in common, just overall.
And thank you for having me as a guest. I'm honored.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So Ellen, again, thank you so much for joining us. Can you go ahead and share the moment on that crowded highway when you had
So,
your epiphany? What
yeah,
exactly went through your mind and how did it alter your outlook in life?
sure. So I reached what most people would refer to as their surrender point. And you see it a lot in recovery. And in this case, in my situation, it was about trauma and escaping from an abusive ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband. And I just was at a complete loss of what to do. I was coming home from an interview and I was completely, I did end up getting a job offer, but I was completely underemployed. I was capable of so much more, but I was struggling just to function. And what I didn't understand is that at that time is that I was carrying around a massive amount of trauma. And I was so traumatized. I tell people I was driving through stop signs and red lights, could barely function. And every time I tried to fix something, it didn't seem to help. So I just literally looked up at the sky and just said, I'm all yours. I don't know what else to do. I need help. And that moment was so important. It was at that moment, as soon as I said those words out loud, my life began to change because I was surrendering to a higher power. And I suddenly realized I wasn't alone. And we're not alone. We're never alone. But I just was aware of the connection until that moment.
Wow, you remind me of my own personal story too, if you don't mind me sharing to you.
Absolutely.
That had happened to me. I was at a breaking point in my drinking where, I've tried AA, I've tried the 12 steps, I've tried rehab, I just relapsed. And it
Oh
wasn't
gosh.
until the moment that I was in my vehicle at my favorite liquor store in the parking lot, there feeling feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, and despair. And that's when I decided to call out to that higher power and say, I cannot do this alone. I need your help. I do
Yeah.
not want to live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And that was it. That surrendering itself just completely, like yourself, changed our lives, right?
Instantly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
instantly.
Yeah.
And then you see all these different things happening. I mean, I always say asking for help is a superpower. This is a superpower.
It is.
It's a superpower, and people think it's a sign of weakness. It is not.
It is not. No, and I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, so
I believe it's a coming home.
mhm.
It's becoming authentic and realizing that we are connected. And that's in often when we're disconnected, that's not real. That's something that we've created. So I've also learned that to surrender is actually a continuous process. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it is. Because that higher power becomes your friend and
Mhm.
is your guide, and you just surrender to everything, and it really is you're being led by the spirit and not your ego. It was all
Yes.
about my ego before. I can do this by myself. I got this. I did. No, I don't, obviously, because I was kept on repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. And to this day, I'm just like, okay, I at nighttime especially, I'm like, okay, I know I have this burden on me. I give it to you and I will just rest. The next
Mhm.
morning, like, I don't know, clarity comes to mind. And I'm just like, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to do and take the next steps. It's amazing.
It is amazing. It is.
Yeah. So you've described your journey from feeling unworthy and powerless, just like how I was feeling, to
Yeah.
reclaiming your strength. Could you actually talk about the initial steps you took after realizing that the events in your life were happening for you, not to you?
Sure. So, the dyslexic label was imposed on me as a very young child. And that was false. Well, the label, the diagnosis is correct, but the bias and the belief system behind that is false. It is often associated with a intellectual disability. So I believed I was brain damaged. I believed I was broken. And the teachers in the school system believed that too. And that's how they treated me. They treated me like a second class citizen. So that had to be deconstructed. And when I got out and started to, got out of my marriage and started to recover, I actually started working with a life coach. And he was the first person to ever present to me the idea that I was gaslighted. And he said to me, I'll never forget these words. I said, no, 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 you don't understand. I can't do any of those things. I'm dyslexic. And I'm just not capable. And he was like, what? At this point, I had earned both a bachelor's and a master's degree. He was like, Ellen, I'm actually intimidated by coaching you. I'm like, how is that even possible? So he went on to say that, you know, what everything that you have been told around the dyslexic diagnosis is an idea that you have been gaslighted into believing. And again, the whole world changed. And I started working on that idea of just deconstructing that. And that had roots. And I had to go and dig up all those roots. And it was part of my identity. So that sentence began to change my identity. And as I went further down that road and continued to work with him, I worked with him for a year. And we just pulled that apart and pulled it out of my system. I actually went through a grieving process because it changed my identity. I lost part of me. And it didn't take very long. It wasn't very painful. But that's really where I began. And I felt so great after working with him for a year. I was this brand new person. I had a new identity. And then I started to say, okay, what's next? What else can I do? And that's when I stumbled onto, and I mean electronically stumbled, onto retired Commander Mark Devine. And he is a retired Navy SEAL. He's actually at Encinitas, California. And he has a training program and a self-development leadership training program for civilians.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and you can go, he has in-person events, he has online trainings, he has all different kinds of things. And I have been to 6 of his events. And the first one I went to, I came back a different person. Again, just learning to transform myself by doing these kinds of things and finding the right coaches and the right mentors. And now his training programs, some of them are very physical, they're just what we would call a crucible. But a lot of his work is just breath work, yoga,
Mhm.
learning skills around mental toughness, emotional resiliency. And that's where I started to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I still had more healing to do, and I'm still healing. I
Mm-hmm.
still work with a trauma specialist. EMDR for me has been fantastic. Um, and I've just combined these things together. So I work on all the different parts of myself. So Mark teaches that there are 5 parts of yourself that you're always working on: the physical, the emotional, the mental, the intuitional, and then what he calls kokoro, which is the Japanese word for merging of the heart and the mind. So now I'm on that path, and life just keeps unfolding and I keep transforming, and there still are challenges, but there's a lot of joy.
That is so exciting. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. And
Thank you.
again, I have similar experience with this. Although it wasn't a Navy SEAL, it would have been cool if it was, but she might as well have been because she kicked my butt. So in my early years of sobriety, what I have done, and I was exercising a lot. I wanted to, get those natural endorphins going. And
Right.
a friend of mine recommended a lady who was a fitness expert, boxing, martial artist, and she also did yoga. And so I was like, perfect, let me go check her out. So I did, and I was just like, wow, amazed by her energy. I felt her energy right away. And I was like, oh wow,
Right.
I need to be here. I need to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what was so neat is that not only was she these experts in yoga and fitness, she also just put out a women's mentoring program for the mind. And I'm
Ah,
like,
yes.
perfect, because I masked all of my emotions and trauma that I've
Hmm.
experienced with alcohol. We all mask it differently in different ways.
Right.
My jam was alcohol. So when I became sober and was working with her, just her skills, a lot of breathing exercises, a lot
Yes.
of pausing, staying still, and just gratitude. And
Hmm.
really, although there were some classes that were very physical, there was also some classes that were just focusing on the body and the mind and the heart. And it was just an incredible journey. And I've been with her for a while. But not so much now. I have other mentors and coaches in different areas. I feel like once you get
Sure.
one, you want many more in
I
your life.
know. You just want more of it because it feels so good.
Yes, and you do
Yeah.
grow so much. And don't you feel like you're getting out of your comfort zone and starting new things that you thought you would never do? And just like, wow, I can actually do this. What am I doing? This is incredible.
That's the thing, is getting out of the comfort zone. And believe me, training with retired Navy SEALs is outside of the comfort zone.
Yeah, that must be so exhilarating though. What an experience. My husband and I were just watching a documentary, just a short one on YouTube about the frogmen. I'm like, because he was like, oh, the frogmen. I'm like, who's the frogmen? They're like a Navy SEALs. And then we were watching,
That's
this
their
was like,
nickname.
yeah. So there was like from the 1950s, they were showing their trainings. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
this is intense for me. I'm already feeling what they're going through, and I'm not even there.
Yes, it is intense.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, for what advice would you actually give to someone who feels trapped in similar circumstances when it comes to trauma and being in an abusive relationship?
Well, if you're in an abusive relationship, you need to get out. I mean, that's the bottom line. There is a national hotline. I don't remember the name of it exactly. It's actually on my website. I have a link. There is a national abuse hotline, and they will help you. They have resources and they will help you to get out. Um, I was told by an attorney, do not tell your spouse you're leaving. 70% of the women who are murdered, and yes, I'm using the word murdered, by their spouse or an intimate partner, are 70% of them are murdered the day that they try to leave.
Wow.
So what I did at the instructions of my attorney was I left in secret. I planned and executed an escape, literally planned it. It took about a month to plan. So that would be the first thing, is you've got to get out, you've got to get to a safe place. And there are shelters and resources, and there are people who will help you. And then, you know, trauma, if you don't deal with it, will weigh you down, and it may even pull you back. It's about breaking the pattern and understanding why you ended up in that relationship. So there's therapy, there's trauma work, and that is so important. But one of the things I always like to talk about is, please be very careful who you choose to work with. make sure they are credentialed. And if something in your gut tells you that this isn't right, run, don't walk. You know, there are cult leaders out there, and they
Oh,
are looking for, and there are predators out there, and they are looking for somebody who's vulnerable. And if you're carrying around trauma, if you have low self-esteem and low self-worth, they are looking for you. And I don't mean this to be scared, to be, alarmist or scary, but it's the truth.
mhm.
And then when you're in a safe place, when you're working with credentialed people who are ethical and appropriate, you begin the healing process. And the healing process takes time. It does. It takes time. And to your point about breathing, you got learning to breathe, doing breath work, doing yoga, doing meditation. That somatic work is so important. And, my example with Mark Devine, he's trained in 7 different yoga practices. Your fitness instructor taught you yoga and breath work. It is that powerful when it is done consistently. And it'll support the healing. It'll support the EMDR. It'll support the therapy work. And
Yeah.
slowly you get better. And I think it needs to be slow, because if we
Mhm.
just snapped our fingers, we would be like, oh my gosh, what just happened to me? It needs to be a slow process, because you have to adjust to the new you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were talking about grieving your old self. I mean, yeah, it's life changing. You're used to being a certain way,
Mhm.
and then changing. It's like, yes, even though you want to change, you are going to have those moments where you have sadness, and that's absolutely
Exactly.
okay. I've gone through that as well. But then,
Sure.
you get out of it, and then you're just
You
like,
move forward.
okay, let's go. There's the
Yes.
new higher conscious, Ellen,
Yes.
ready to go and to explore and do different things and meet new people and just live life, because life
Yeah.
is very short. Just
Yeah.
one family member just passed away, and a dear friend of mine just passed away within the same
Oh,
week last week, and I'm just like,
I'm so sorry.
oh, thank you. And so it's like life is too short, so
Hmm.
do the best that you can with what you have, and then make it better if you want it. It's supposed to be
Right.
fun. We do go through trauma, yes, and like you, I'm glad you brought that up. When you are vulnerable, make sure you do find somebody that has credentials, that is trustworthy,
Yeah.
and listen to your gut. Yes, that gut will
Yes.
tell you yay or
Yes.
nay, and run if
Yeah.
it's a nay, like you said.
Yeah. I had a really interesting experience when I was doing a meditation when I was first working with my first coach. This was back in 2015. And I was laying there and I was just really in a quiet, peaceful space. And I actually felt like a version of me sat up in the bed, stood up, and walked out the door.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't understand what just happened to me, but I knew it was positive. I knew it wasn't scary. I was not frightened, but I think that was an energetic transformation. And I think a lot of negativity just got up and walked out the door, and a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. The other thing too is that I would say to somebody who's dealing with carrying around a lot of trauma, you don't have to carry it around. You don't have to, but you got to do the work.
There is work.
You got to do
There
the work.
is work. Yes, yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book. You
Sure.
mentioned grasping at each success like a rung on a ladder. How
Yeah.
did you change this perspective to start appreciating your achievements?
It really began with that first coach, and deconstructing that idea that I was less than or brain damaged. And it was just like you said, it was like rungs on a ladder. It's one step at a time, or one climb at a time. Um, I also, did a lot of recapitulation and looked back on what I had accomplished and really gave it the weight that it deserved. I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree when everybody said I was incapable. My parents were told in a parent teacher conference when I was 6 or 7 years old that college was out of the question and they should focus on finding me a husband to take care of me. So I was really up against a lot of stuff. And so I never really gave it the weight that it deserved. And actually, there's a psychological term for it. It's called maladaptive attributes. And it's the belief or the idea. And I would defer to the experts because I don't know if I'm going to get this right. But my understanding of this is that only bad things come out of us. So something that we accomplish, we cannot give ourselves credit for because we couldn't have possibly done something good or something worthy or something that should be recognized. So I really had to work through that. And I did that with a therapist and coach as well. So, and I started, it was interesting. I did a podcast with one of my coaches and he asked me to write. Yeah. And he asked me to write out, his name is Dennis Stoika. He's a retired FBI agent. And I did self-defense training with him as well.
Mm.
And that was 22 hours of training in 2 days. Boy, was I sore after that.
Oh man, I can only imagine.
But I knew what I was signing up for, so it was all good. He asked me to just do some bullet points of my accomplishments, and then at the beginning of the podcast, he read them out, and I just, wow, I did all that. And I even said that in the podcast. Yeah, I did all that.
Yeah.
So I'm still taking it in. I'm still taking in that and still healing those maladaptive attributes. But I'm starting to get really comfortable with it and say, yeah, I did that. And I wrote a book and I did this. And, so I think it's part of the healing process.
Yes, because we're so conditioned in this world, especially the school system. My oldest son, he's 16. He has autism. Functional, but
Right.
he just learns differently. Very intelligent boy, very intelligent. Like I'm learning from him.
Right.
I don't know if he's an old soul too, but but very intelligent. And he knows exactly what he likes and what he doesn't like. And then if you have to speak to him a certain way, it's like as a matter of fact way. You
Right.
can't be like loosey-goosey with your words.
Right.
And it's cute. And he's getting good grades. Like the school system sucks. Okay. I'm so sorry, but I don't like the public schools because even growing up in elementary school for myself, I don't really use the word hate, but I strongly disliked my third grade teacher. She put me down so much and made me feel like so low. And I was getting bad grades and I was already going through suffering from whatever trauma I was going through during that time.
Right.
He just made it a lot worse, but bless my fourth grade teacher and we're on Facebook together. So she's my friend. And I always say, I always talk about you on my podcast. Yes, Mrs. Singer, if you're listening to this, I'm talking about you once again. She just completely changed my life because she taught me in a different way with more love and compassion and understanding. And it gave me more confidence. And then I was just doing better and better and better. But the school system, the teachers are no good. Some of them, not all of them. Like I said, I do have my favorites. But yeah, they always categorizing and singling you out or doing something. And I don't like that. Yeah.
And I had a similar experience. In my case, it was mostly the administrators who were the problem. I did have some very good teachers and they were lifesavers. And to all the amazing teachers out there, thank you, because we need you. And the difference that they make in a child's life carries through the rest of their life. And it really matters.
Yeah.
So.
Bless the teachers. Thank you. Now, going back to your book, I want to talk about your writing process. Like, how was it? Was it challenging or, was it thrilling, exciting? Let's talk about that.
It took a really long time. I wrote for about 5 years. And I worked with a writing coach, which was the absolute best decision I made around the book, or one of the best decisions I made. And her name is Kate Gray, and she is a retired novelist, writing coach, and award-winning poet. And I think I was her last client, and I got to, we were just about finished with my manuscript, and she told me she was retiring. Oh my gosh, I almost panicked. You want to watch me panic? Tell me my writing coach is retiring. She said, no, it's okay. I'm going to stay with you till we finish this. So she stopped taking on new clients, which is what happened.
I see.
And what she taught me is that how you tell a story is just as important as the story itself. And it was I would write out all these different stories and in kind of short, short stories. And then we worked together to weave them together. So the book is not chronological. So when I talk about learning to scuba dive, that whole chapter, I talk about my childhood living on the beach on the East Coast and how I became so comfortable in the water. And then when I did training with Mark Devine, we did what we call surf games, where they actually take you out and you go to the beach and you're in the water and your arms are linked together and the waves are crashing over your head. Because I had been such a comfortable, I was so comfortable in the water as a child, I laughed all the way through it.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of we took a theme, and then the chapter had different stories and we wove them together, which is very, very difficult to do. And I couldn't have done it without the coach.
See, coaches are amazing.
Yes, they are.
That's so
And
awesome.
then I found my publisher, who is Jessica Buchanan, and she had her company is Soul Speak Press. She's a small publisher, and she actually has quite a story herself. Many people might remember her back in 2012, and this is our tie to the Navy SEALs. She was kidnapped in Africa, in Somalia. Actually, she was there working as a teacher and an aid worker. She was held for 93 days.
Oh my goodness.
And President Obama sent in SEAL Team 6, and they rescued her and a Danish, I think he was Danish man. Yeah, and she told me she did some bargaining and said she wanted to start Soul Speak Press to raise up women's voices. And that is exactly what she's doing. So meeting her and working with her, the editing process, that took 9 months. And we worked through it together, and it was a pleasure working with her. She really took care of me. It's very, very scary. I don't think people realize, to put a really personal story out there.
Mm-hmm.
And with Jessica and a few other people, some good friends, they really helped me move through that fear. I kept asking myself, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do this? Am I really going to do this? And that took a good 6 months for me to work through that fear.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, I got there. And Jess would call me all the time when we're just about to launch. She's like, how you doing? How you doing? What's happening? What are you feeling? So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, because I've spoken to a lot of authors who have done memoirs, and they're saying, oh, yeah, it was hard for me to write my book because they were getting mad at me, my family members, but you know what, Giselle, but I had to not listen to them and just do what I was supposed to do. And I wrote my book, and it's out there and it's helping others. And that's really what all that matters, is that people are reading it. People are reading it, and they're getting inspired and they're getting encouraged, and they can look up to you and be like, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it too.
And that's why I wrote the book, because not only did I survive, and I think a lot of people survive things, but then they don't necessarily know how to heal and thrive.
Right.
And like you, we've both been through this process, but a lot of people never get there. And I want people to know that you got to do the work. And it's, you know what? It's really not that scary. Once you get some momentum, it's not so scary, and you can work through it. You can heal, you can thrive, you can fall in love with life again, and you can create, or I should say, recreate or reinvent yourself, recreate your life.
Yeah, rewrite your story.
Yes.
You are the author, director,
yes.
and screenwriter, producer
yes.
of you. And you are your greatest project, really.
It's so interesting that you say you're the author of the story, because my publisher, Jess Buchanan, when she did her TED Talk, she says that in her TED Talk. She says, yes, I realize I am the author of my story, at the very end of her TED Talk. So yeah, it's so funny you said that.
Synchronicities.
Yes, yes.
There are no coincidences.
No, no, everything's happening for a reason. Things are moving around.
Oh,
Yes.
it's moving,
Yeah.
all right. I tell you that. It's moving,
Yes.
all right. Well, that's amazing. Now, where can our listeners go ahead and find you on social media? Maybe reach out
Sure,
to you on your website or all that good
sure.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, my website is ellenbusch.com. But just remember, Busch is the same as Busch beer. So it's Busch. So the family joke is it's Busch like the beer, not like the president. And everybody gets that. They spell it right. And then I'm on Facebook, Ellen Busch. I'm on Instagram, ebush1500. I'm also on LinkedIn. And if folks want to reach out to me, I'm also a coach. I've just finished a coaching class, a coaching certification course. So, and then my book is available on Amazon. And then the audio version is actually in production. And I don't have a final date yet, but I'm hoping the end of June. So it should be out very soon.
Amazing. And everything will be in the show notes for our listeners. But finally, looking ahead, what are your hopes for your readers and listeners who engage with your story? And what do you want them to take away from your experiences?
I think it's getting, if you want to grow, you're gonna have to do something uncomfortable, like we talked about. Now, I say that with a caveat, make sure the challenge or, a crucible is physically appropriate and check with your healthcare provider. I don't want
Yeah.
anybody coming after me. um, and do something that really interests you. I'm a big outdoors person. I'm a diehard skier. I love to hike, and that's why I live here in Colorado. Um, but maybe people aren't interested in skiing. What is interesting to you
Mhm.
want to do? I had a good friend. I lived in New England um, before I moved out here to Colorado, and I had a coworker who was her faith and her Irish heritage were very, very important to her, and she wanted to learn how to play the bagpipes. And that was her challenge. And that was the challenge that was appropriate for her. So I just really supported her and said, yeah, go do it. Go do it. What do you need to get started on that? And so it really can be whatever is interesting to you. What are you curious about? That's a great question. What are you curious about? Because every time we take on a challenge and we learn to persevere, we grow.
Yeah. My cousin and I, we were always talking before. We're like, we need to go where we grow. So
There you go.
go where you grow. But yeah, it is just getting a little bit uncomfortable. And yes, you want to make sure you're not going overboard with these extreme things. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, like
Exactly. We're not
skydiving and you're not
advocating for
ready.
anything. Yeah. Yeah. Check with your healthcare provider.
And listen to your gut too. Like, hey,
Yes.
it's there to guide you.
Yes.
Your intuition is
Be
there to guide you.
smart about it. And the
Right.
other piece, if I could just jump in here for a second too.
Yeah.
This is something that my father taught me. He said, whenever possible, train with the best, which is what drew me to Mark Divine. And then he also said, because he knew I was a very adventurous child, and he knew not to try and squash that actually encourage that. He said, you can do whatever you want to do, Ellen, but get properly trained.
Mm.
And I think he was absolutely right, because that's how you mitigate risk. You don't eliminate it, but you can mitigate it. So yeah.
Yeah, that was like me in kayaking in Hawaii just recently in the ocean, which I never even been on a boat in the ocean,
Oh
let
boy.
alone those waves. And it was really choppy. And we went out to do like some snorkeling, but it was getting too intense. And I felt like I was going everywhere and getting a little bit
Yeah.
nauseous too. And then the water kept on going in my face. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to be just
Yeah.
thinking as I'm a swimmer, I can swim
Yeah.
pretty well. But what I was interesting is that as I was getting a little bit panicky because it's something new for me, it's a new experience,
Yeah.
the waves were getting panicky. But as soon as I stopped and I did breathe, and I said, you
Mm-hmm.
know what, Gina, you are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I started swimming backwards away from the cliff because that's where all of the action was. Then the waves started calming down, and I'm like, oh wow, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And to your point, the breath work when something isn't going right is such a fantastic tool.
Mhm.
Um, but a more powerful tool, no matter where anybody is in the healing process, is a consistent breath work. Even
Mhm.
just, even 5 or 10 minutes in the morning and in the evening,
Oh yeah.
that consistency will change everything. So, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for being on my show. Is there any last thoughts or words or anything that I didn't bring up or question
No,
that you'd like to share?
no, no. And I think you asked great questions. Yeah. And thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, this has been great. You've actually asked a lot of different questions that I haven't been asked before. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
Like you said, everyone has their own style.
Exactly. Exactly. Everybody does it a little differently. So
And that's
yeah.
so neat. Yeah, I love that we have our own minds and our own creative style, and it's all good though. It's all good.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being an amazing guest. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be a guest with you.